Welcome back to Kintsugi Heroes, helping people tell the stories they need to share so you can find the stories that you need to hear.
We're delighted to welcome Tessa, a valued member of our team who joined us as a grant writer in 2024. Tessa's story is truly remarkable, having faced significant personal challenges, including profound losses, and living with multiple sclerosis since her teens. She's gained valuable insights into the meaning of resilience. By sharing her journey, Tessa hopes to inspire others facing adversity to find strength and keep moving forward. We're honoured to have Tessa with us today, not just as part of our team, but as a true Kintsugi hero. Hello, Tessa. Thanks for joining us on Kintsugi Heroes podcast.
Thank you, Natalie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Tessa, we met last year when you joined the Kintsugi Heroes team, and it's been really interesting and a great pleasure to get to know you. And the more I've got to know you, the more I have learnt that you have come through quite a number of challenges, and you have not only survived and coped, but you've recovered, and you have a lot to offer our audience with your resilience story. So let's start from the beginning of your early childhood, and we look forward to hearing your journey.
Thanks, Natalie. I had a great childhood in a lot of ways. I grew up on the family farm in rural South Australia. My dad was a farmer. My mum was a stay-at-home mum, at least till I was in high school when she did go back to work. I had two younger brothers, Nathan, who was 2 years younger than me, and Sam, who is 7.5 years younger than me. And living on a farm, I think, gave us a lot of freedom in a lot of ways. We used to love riding our push bikes around the place. As when we got older, motorbikes were a lot of fun as well. Learning to drive the ute in the paddock, all those sort of things that are unique to growing up as a farm kid. And got a lot of great memories. We used to go for a summer holiday just at a local beach just 30 minutes away, but two other local families went down as well. So be great at the caravan park, you're with your friends, jetty jumping, days on the beach, all good stuff. My mum was originally from Adelaide, so we did... I remember from when I was quite young, always spending time back in Adelaide with her side of the family and my auntie and uncles. But there was always a bit of an undercurrent, even as a child, that my brother Nathan was born with a congenital heart condition, and he had major surgery just when I was beginning year 4 at school, and which I remember very clearly because I had a kidney infection and actually vomited all over my desk on the first day of school. But Mum and Dad were with Nathan in Melbourne while he had this big operation. And I think that was sort of the first time I realised how serious his condition actually was. And then in 1993, we just started the school year. I had just started year 10, Nathan year 8, and Nathan died really suddenly. And that was just totally unexpected and obviously just, devastating for our family unit. Nathan was had such a big personality, and I don't know if that was just who he was or part of his journey, but it's really I really love that he's been gone 32 years now, but he's still very well remembered, certainly amongst people we were close to at that time. And obviously that had shockwaves through our family and the community, and just totally unexpected, and also he died suddenly, which was not something my parents had been prepared for. And in fact, they had been told by his specialists that that would never happen, and that, he would deteriorate slowly and there'd be time to get help and all of that sort of thing, which unfortunately was not what happened at all. But I guess as a family, we banded together, had a lot of a lot of beautiful friends offering support, and I think my mum's sister came over for a while, and gradually life got back to a bit of a new normal. But then the following year in '94, probably around July, we were doing a history project at school, and we were outside in the local cemetery, which was a bit creepy, and it was really cold. And I remember being frustrated because I couldn't hold a pen to write notes for the assignment we were working on. And I just assumed it was because it was so cold. And when I got back into the classroom, my fingers would thaw out and I'd be able to hold a pen again. But unfortunately, got back to the classroom, I still couldn't hold a pen, and also developed a funny, almost buzzing sensation in my hands. So I went off to the first aid room, and no one really knew what to do with me. So one of my parents came to pick me up from school, and I remember even then we went and saw a local GP who was a farmer's wife who lived very close to our farm. And I think right away multiple sclerosis was something that she mentioned even right back then. But I did then have to wait quite a while, thinking weeks, if not months, to get an appointment with a neurologist. And in the meantime, I was just spending all of my school day in the typing room because I couldn't hold a pen and couldn't write. So, I had to be in the typing room to get my work done. But, quite a isolating experience when you're, 16 years old, and everything was a bit strange and not really knowing what was happening. But I had a dose of high dose IV steroids as an inpatient at the Royal Adelaide Hospital, and gradually my hands went back to normal. And I remember that we went on a family holiday to the Northern Territory and Ayers Rock, and back to South Australia on the Ghan, which was a very memorable family holiday. But also I remember keeping a diary, and as the trip progressed, my handwriting got better and better. And I know that my mum spent a lot of time researching MS and, what to expect, what could happen. And I just remember I wasn't at all interested, but rather I was just glad that the symptoms went away, and just kept on living my life as a 16-year-old, got my driver's license, and because I lived on a farm, I actually got my L's for a motorbike so that I could drive on my own right away. And
How did your friends react to your MS when you're being 16? It's a time in life when people tend to want to conform and not be different. They want to be part of the pack. So how was it socially for you at 16, discovering you have MS?
To be honest, it's hard to remember that far back because it is a long time ago now. But I don't remember anyone being, funny about it. I think someone might have asked me if it was contagious, which obviously it's not. But I don't remember being treated any differently because of what was happening. And I just, what I do remember is just it was a bit isolating, spending so much of my time that year in the typing room, and sort of apart away from the class environment. But I think too at that age, there's certainly a resilience. I feel like I took it on board more than I would have had I first had symptoms in my 30s or 40s now even, when your life's more settled. And obviously at 16, I was still living at home and dependent on my parents. So it certainly wasn't the disaster I would have thought if I was older and in a different situation. So, so the symptoms improved and I went off to uni and started working, and I guess I did have a few more flare-ups of the MS and had to have the high-dose steroids again. But I never spent, I don't remember ever spending a lot of time worrying about it, because every time I had the IV treatment, the symptoms got better. So I guess back then it all seemed very manageable. And then when I was in my 20s, I spent some time living in Melbourne, and my auntie actually connected me with a lady who she had worked with who had MS. And while that was quite confronting in some ways because she was in a wheelchair and not working and like quite isolated by then, the upside was that she directed me to her neurologist and actually started treatment, and learned to inject myself 3 times a week, which was quite horrifying at the time. Although, of course, compared to a diabetic and all the needles they have 3 times a week would probably sound great to a diabetic. But at the time, that was all a bit scary with the injecting myself and getting onto that treatment. But I actually ended up being on that drug for 17 years, and I think it really did help slow the disease down, which is what it's meant to do. And and I also spent some time living in Perth, and which beautiful city, but I soon realised that as long as I lived in Perth, I would never get to travel because I would spend all my money coming home to South Australia. But once I did get back to South Australia, I have happily done some pretty awesome travelling over the last few years. So in 2006, I moved from Perth back to Adelaide, and I was doing some admin temping work and staying at my brother's house, who was actually away in the Air Force when I got back, but with his now wife, and got back into work and everything. And I'd moved back because I wanted to be closer to family, but unfortunately, moving back was just in time to watch my dad's life unravel, and he'd been having issues with his eyesight, and he was actually diagnosed with Graves' disease, but also we didn't really understand at first that there is, because it affects the thyroid, there's very much a mental health aspect to it as well, and depression and anxiety and all those sort of things are very common, but this certainly wasn't really known to us at the time. And my dad took his own life on the 10th of July 2006, and I think that is still the most shocking, devastating day that I've ever experienced, and just I don't know, just the disbelief, but devastation, grief, just something unimaginable. And I guess for me too, when my dad died, I had no idea that male suicide especially is actually pretty common in Australia, and that unfortunately I think it's 6 or 7 men every day take their own lives. But I had no knowledge of that at that point, and it was just just such a shocking event. And also because my dad was an only child, for me and my brother to sort of have to be looking after our grandparents in a way, if you like. And also, I remember I had the job of being the one to make phone calls, to let people know what had happened, and just really hard stuff, because nothing, I think, prepares you for that. And I think you just do it, because just do what needs to be done. And yeah,
Tessa, how old were you at the time?
I was 28 when Dad died, but it was very, I think I'd always been close to my dad because, well, I think firstly we had similar sense of humour, but also we had a bit of a different dynamic because Nathan was born with a heart condition, and there were times when Mum would be with him in hospital and I would be at home with Dad. So yeah, we did sort of have a closeness, I think, that not all daughters would necessarily have with their fathers. And yeah, so, and I think also on top of that was certainly nearly 20 years ago or 18 years ago, very much the stigma associated with suicide, and, you know, it's coward's way out, and just that sort of unhelpful commentary, and you know, people not wanting to talk about Dad even years later. I can only assume because of how he died. So that's I think that was something that took a long time to come to terms with. And I think for me, one of the best things I did was to get involved with peer support groups. So I did peer support training with Living Beyond Suicide. I got involved with a group in Adelaide, Bereaved Through Suicide, and through that got to meet a lot of other people who'd been affected, losing their own loved ones. But I think through that, for me, that was very healing. And also when I moved back to York Peninsula in 2013, being part of actually setting up a suicide prevention network for York Peninsula, and sort of using my experience to try and avoid other people going through that sort of tragedy. But unfortunately, just I guess when I thought I was maybe starting to get a grip on Dad's death, the MS struck again very forcefully. And I remember it was early 2007 that I had a really severe relapse. And, you know, so I'm 28 years old, can hardly walk, couldn't drive. Again, very isolating, and just a lot to deal with on top of losing Dad only 6 months before. But again, I had the drugs and they did work their magic again. But then again, and this had never happened before, having another relapse within the first 6 months of 2007, and just really, for the first time, being really frightened. I'm going to be in a wheelchair before I'm 30, and, you know, what's my life going to look like, and all these fears, and yeah, which I probably wasn't very good at expressing at the time. But now all these years later, in hindsight, I can see, you know, 2006, 2007 was in a very, very low place, and I had to do a lot of work to get back out of that, and move beyond the grief, and sort of comes to terms with the fact that, well, MS is a scary thing to live with, because you don't know what's coming.
Tessa, you've had to face a serious disease, MS, and the loss of your brother and later your father. How did you cope? What strategies or resilience tools did you engage to cope with these very difficult challenges?
Well, I think when my brother died, there was, like, that was just no strategies employed at all, just more getting on with life and moving forward. And really, it wasn't until I think after Dad's death that I first really sought a counsellor and or a therapist, or I've seen a few now over the years, and definitely. I think the trick is finding someone who you can talk openly with, but also someone who has the skills that you need at the time, if that makes sense. I think not all counsellors. It's like anything. Like not all therapists are the same, so sometimes you have to shop around to find the right one. I think is what I'm trying to say. And but when you do find the right one, I think that's just hugely beneficial to have someone to challenge you a little bit and maybe get yourself out of your own head and think about other strategies that you can use, whether, for me personally, meditation. I have the Calm app on my iPhone, and I absolutely swear by it. I would use it every day, and I've probably used that for, I don't know, 5 or more years now. And I think for me that's been life-changing, because I know for me, before I was using that, if I got stressed out, I would basically start hyperventilating. So learning just to slow down the breath and breathing and being present can make a huge difference. I think over time there's been a lot of little things along the way that have helped with the journey. But yeah, I think for me, therapy of whatever shape or form, and peer support, so meeting other people going through similar challenges, and meditation for me are probably the 3 big ones.
And you have a dog too, don't you?
I do.
Does the dog play a role in your well-being?
He does. When I got my dog nearly 10 years ago, I never walked anywhere because I'd had so many problems with my legs with the MS. And when I got him, I knew that I'd need to walk him every day because he was a 3-year-old Jack Russell cross, so lots of energy. And so every morning after I had my coffee, off we'd go for a walk, and we started very slowly, but gradually built up and probably got up to walking about an hour every day. And for me, that was life-changing, because, and I specifically remember the first big overseas trip I did to the US. I didn't have my dog, and I remember that being quite uncomfortable at times because I'd be so puffed out, and if I had to do any walking. Whereas when I went on another trip about a year later, I just remember that being so liberating, because I was so used to walking with my dog that I actually felt comfortable getting around cities I was in by foot. And it was, it was quite amazing what a difference that made to the experience. But also just obviously everyday life. I still walk him religiously, and I definitely find walking time is always good thinking time. I don't listen to podcasts or anything while I walk him. Or music. I just walk and have my own thoughts and talk to him sometimes to encourage him to hurry up quite often. But yeah, and he's funny because I joke that he's actually part cat, because he's not, he doesn't need to be near me all the time. But at night, he definitely likes to snuggle and be next to me on the couch and yes, be in my bed. I know some people just cringe at the thought of a dog in a bed, but he's my little snuggle buddy. And so his name is Boss, and I quite often joke, boss by name, boss by nature. And for me, he's
Jack Russells are like that, aren't they?
Yes. So a lot of attitude in a very small body, but he has definitely been life changing for me. So and sort of a form of animal therapy at times as well, I'm sure.
So, Tessa, can you describe your life, what your life looks like today?
Sure. So definitely still have challenges. I broke my wrist in December, so that was been and is very challenging. That I wasn't able to drive for about 8 weeks, and just getting back into that now. Just only being able to type again with 2 hands. But overall, I think I feel very lucky because I work as a consultant. So I work from home. I work with different organisations, and I love that about my work, that I can work and learn about different organisations like Kintsugi Heroes. And I guess for me, the big thing is, though, after 30 years now of living with MS, I feel incredibly grateful to still be able to live independently and drive and walk my dog, and all those things that you just take for granted. Until, something happens and you suddenly can't do something. But I think, there's certainly things I can't do due to MS, and do have a certain level of disability. But I think for me, the main thing is focusing on what I can do, and just enjoying life for what it is, with my dog. Got a great small group of friends. I love watching my brother's kids grow up now. So got a niece and 2 nephews, and my 13-year-old nephew is now actually taller than me, which is a bit scary, and, seeing them grow up right before my eyes. But I think given the challenges I've faced over the last 30 years, and 32 years since Nathan passed, I feel like come a long way, and hopefully have a bit to offer others who might be fighting their own battles, and some suggestions on what steps to take to help keep moving forward.
Yeah. Tessa, what advice would you give to people who in the audience who may be struggling now? Perhaps they're facing an unwanted serious disease like MS, or perhaps they're grieving. What final advice would you offer to the audience?
I guess a big one for me is take things one day at a time. Like, try not to be thinking too far ahead, and really lean into the people who are there for you. I think, we all have just those wonderful friends who are prepared to, come and visit, or take you somewhere, or, just have a chat when you need it. And but like I said before, seek support, seek therapy. I personally have found meditation to be life-changing, and peer support, I think, is a really good one as well. So.
Tessa, thank you very much for joining us on Kintsugi Heroes. It's amazing what you have endured and survived, and your life is wonderful now, and you're contributing to the world and in so many ways. So thanks very much for sharing your story with us.
Thanks, Natalie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Kintsugi Heroes. Thank you to Colin Lilly for permission to use Broken as our theme music for this series. If you enjoyed this conversation, share the podcast with a friend and let us know by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support Kintsugi Heroes and the stories we share, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au and follow the instructions to make a tax-deductible donation. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.